Onde a gente vai?
Surpresa.
I wanted to say that I am very honored to be here.
I started looking at location photos. I've shot many times in Rio, but never in Sao Paulo, and saw that Sao Paulo had tons of tall buildings similar to New York.
Sao Paulo is such a cinematic city.
One of the things that I worry about as you travel is sometimes not bringing your own crew, but the crew in Sao Paulo is incredible.
And seeing in the day, in the night, just speaks to cinema and storytelling. Everyone involved in the project are really excited to be here and to have the opportunity to.
I still want to make one more film. What film is that?
Olá, mais uma vez eu dou as boas-vindas a todos que estão conectados no comKids e vamos dar início a mais um momento, mais uma Masterclass, mais uma atividade do comKids Interativo, do Festival comKids, esse ano falando de metaverso, falando de multiverso, recebendo muita gente, falando, debatendo os vários finalistas da competição. E agora, com muito prazer, a gente vai fazer uma Masterclass do David Kleeman. O David Kleeman é VP da Dubit, que é uma empresa que também trabalha com conteúdo, mas principalmente com pesquisa. E eu queria dar as boas-vindas ao David y también bienvenidos a todos los amigos de América Latina que están conectados con nosotros. Entonces, llamamos a Dave Kleeman para que nos diga algunas palabras. Hi, David.
Hello, good to see you.
Well, so we are very happy to have you at comKids again. You are always here to bring some not only information, but the trends, the things that are happening, not only in the US, but in the world. So we are very excited and we are very happy to have you here again, talking about the metaverse, which is something that we really are not sure what it is. So maybe you can clarify.
Well, I think when you see the presentation, there's a lot there. There's a lot of information, a lot of perspective. And so I look forward to questions, and anyone who doesn't get a chance or thinks of a question tomorrow, the next day, is welcome to send me an email or find me on WhatsApp, and I'm happy to answer questions. It's what I love to do.
Okay, so então, gente, vamos imediatamente passar para a apresentação do David. Ela está em inglês, legendada em português. Eu espero que para os amigos da América Latina, de alguma forma, um mix entre inglês e português vai ser alguma coisa palatável. E peço à equipe, por favor, desmistificando o metaverso com David Kleeman. Por favor, entra o vídeo.
Bom dia, comKids. I wish I could be there in Brazil with you, but for this year, we'll just have to make it virtual. I'm David Kleeman. I'm the Senior Vice President of Global Trends for Dubit, and I want to talk to you a little bit today about the metaverse. It's probably a term that you've been hearing quite a bit, and I want to see if I can maybe make it a little bit more clear what it's all about and why children's media experts really need to be paying attention to it. Let me start by just giving you a little bit of background on Dubit, the company that I work for, because I think it will inform the perspective that I take on the metaverse. Dubit has been around since 1999 when it built the first virtual world for teenagers, so we've been in the immersive media and games world for over 20 years now. Right now, we're kind of a two-part company. On one side, we have research and strategy, and I'll tell you a little bit more about our Dubit trends, where some of the statistics you'll see come from in just a second. But we also have our studio. And in the studio, we have been a game studio. We are now making the turn to be a metaverse studio. And what we mean by that is we're building a lot of games for the current platforms that are kind of starting the metaverse, like Roblox, Core, and some of the others that we're adding over time. You can see that we've done some really interesting work for it. We did the immersive media for the Brits, the Grammys, Nickelodeon's Nickverse. We built their world for them, and also their Kids' Choice Awards. The Samsung Superstar Galaxy had a performance by Charlie XCX that just got nominated for an MTV Video Music Award. And we've been experimenting with things like fashion shows and live game events as well. When you see statistics in my talk today, they will come from Dubit Trends. And Dubit Trends is our twice-yearly survey of kids in the US, the UK, and then you see a bunch of other flags there. Roughly once a year we visit several other countries, about 20 of them currently to be exact. And we do a deep dive survey into what kids are doing with media, what devices they own, what they have access to, how they use them, when they use them, where they use them, who they use them with. A lot about content. We ask them to tell us their favorite things. So rather than giving them a list of things that we know, we want to hear from them what they're playing with, what they're watching, what they're doing right now. And then a lot about how they find their way to content. Currently in an environment where there's so much media available, how kids discover something new is really important. So let's run down just what I'm going to talk about today. We're going to start with defining the metaverse. There are so many definitions out there right now that, if you talk to 100 people, you'll probably hear 120 different definitions. Then we'll talk about how during COVID, kids and gamers really kick-started the metaverse. We're going to talk about how the metaverse is everywhere, kind of take a walk through a day in the life of a typical, let's say, teenage kid, and how they might interact with things that we might think of as metaverse platforms, or where they might use other things as well. Why brands, content, and TV need to pay attention to the metaverse, how to keep it safe and ethical, because we really only get one shot at this to make it right for kids. How kids express their identity in the metaverse, how they put forward their persona and their personality, and how sometimes they experiment with that. And then finally, just some takeaways. So let's define the metaverse. You may be familiar with the William Gibson quote that the future is here, it's just not evenly distributed so far. The metaverse is here, but it's kind of in pieces. It's like a piece of furniture that you have to put together. So we're going to have to assemble it. The metaverse, in my mind, and again, there are so many definitions right now, I'm going to tell you what I believe it is, because I believe if we put that view forward, then we're more likely to develop toward that. And I put forward a very positive and very beneficial for kids view of the metaverse. It really describes worlds where you can immerse yourself and you can do the things that you want to do the way that you want to do them. So you can build games, or you can just play games. You can tell your own stories, or you can listen to somebody else's story, or participate in somebody else's story. You can explore, you can learn, you can teach, you can socialize with your friends, which is really what's driving a lot of it. You can communicate with people at a distance. You can use your imagination. It's a creative platform. You can build things. And then also there will be an active commerce inside the metaverse. People will buy, sell, and trade things inside there. I say it's global. I think what's important for Brazil is that we make sure that Brazilians and Latin Americans have their voice in the metaverse, that it not just be a north to south, that it not just be the English-speaking world, but that the metaverse be built for cultural exchange. It's immersive. It should be seamless for kids to play. They should be able to travel from place to place without running into frustrations. persistent. If you own something in the metaverse, you should be able to take it with you wherever you go. And when you come back the next time, if you go away from playing in the metaverse, you should still have all those things that you had before you left. It's participatory. As I said, it's a builder's platform. You can create your own games, you can create your own stories, and we'll see how that's really doing interesting things with content and brands. It's digital and it's physical. Most of what we think of as the metaverse is immersive in digital media. But really, if we think about how the world is going to work going forward, you may buy something in a virtual space that will be delivered to your door in a physical form. And it's brand crossing. And this is probably one of the toughest things about the development of the metaverse, is why brands will want to be in spaces where other brands, competitive brands, also exist. But that's how kids play. They don't go to the play box and say, oh, I can't play with a Marvel and a DC character because they're different universes. Kids just want to create, invent, and create their own worlds. So what I said before, we have a choice. A lot of companies want to give you a metaverse that fits their needs. They want it to be very commercial, as you'll see in one of those pictures there, the idea that it's sort of Times Square, commercials, advertising everywhere. They might want it to be passive, just sit in a chair and take in what's happening around you. Or they have a particular vision of how we're going to be social in the metaverse. We can build and envision the metaverse that we want, and as kids experts, we really need to think about what's going to make this special and good for kids. So 3 immediate takeaways as we define the metaverse. First, just as a fish doesn't know it's in water, a kid is never going to use the term metaverse. No child will say, Mom, I'm going to play in the metaverse, I'll be back for dinner. Because kids don't differentiate in these kinds of play. They just want to play the way that satisfies them. And childhood doesn't change. The context of childhood does, but they want to play in the ways that kids have always played. They want to lower the frustration barriers. They want to be able to communicate, to play, to learn all in one place without having to go from platform to platform, shut one thing down and start another thing up. They just want to be able to do the things they want to do easily. They want to be able to use it on their phone, on their tablet, on their PC, and sometimes even maybe on their television, without having different experiences that make them learn all over again what it's going to be. When something doesn't satisfy them, they don't want to have to create a solution for themselves. They want you to think that through for them, of how to make it a satisfying experience. During the pandemic, kids often had to hack solutions. If one platform didn't work, well, maybe they'd bring in another and pair them up so that they got what they wanted. They want to be able to create. They want to be able to create easily. And they want to be able to define themselves with their avatars and their virtual goods. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. As I said, we get one chance at making this safe. Regulators all over the world are watching to make sure we're taking good care of kids in digital spaces right now. The move from what's called Web 2, which is centralized media, like Facebook, like Instagram, like Roblox, like Minecraft, to Web 3, which is decentralized, where communities create the platforms. That's going to help with that. Because you're going to be able to have options. If you don't like the way a platform works, move away from it and find a community that does work the way you want it to. And if people vote for privacy, if they vote for safety, by going somewhere that they feel is private and safe, then the ones that they don't feel comfortable with are going to have to change their ways. Let's look a little bit about how during the COVID pandemic, kids and gamers really were the ones who kick-started the metaverse. We talk about what happened during COVID as down on the corner went up on the server. That kids, all the things that they do socially had to go to a digital form. They couldn't be with their friends on the playground, at school, all the different ways that they want to play. So they found ways to do it on Roblox, on Minecraft, on Fortnite, on Zoom, on Discord, all sorts of platforms that made them feel comfortable that they weren't so separated from their friends. But what happened was they used so much media that they quickly hit a point where they just were finished. This kid is a teen boy we talked to in April, so only a month after the pandemic started, who said, I finished YouTube. When does the next season start? He had already been through everything he wanted to go through. What did kids talk about through the pandemic? You can see that they talked about what we think of as the metaverse platforms. Even at the beginning, they were talking about Roblox, Minecraft, Fortnite, and I've put video games and Pokemon into blue because I think they are suggesting that kids are talking about social and game experiences which are tangential, which are related to the metaverse. You get to the middle of COVID, and really what they're talking about substantially is COVID. They are still talking about games to some extent, but in April 2021, they really were talking mostly about what was happening in their lives when they were separated. And now as we start to come out, they're back to talking about video games, Roblox, Minecraft, Fortnite. We look at this generation as the I can generation. They don't want passive media. They want to participate, they want to create, they want to make things their own. I love this story in the upper left of the 8-year-olds who got tablets from or Chromebooks from their school, and the Chromebooks wouldn't let them use various social platforms. So instead they figured out how to use Google Slides as a social network, that they could write notes to each other in the shared slides that they usually use for schoolwork. Discord, never meant as a children's platform, but it became their social hub because they couldn't chat with each other on some of the other game platforms. And then this wonderful story of an 11-year-old who built the entire town from Encanto in Minecraft. But that wasn't enough. Not only did he do that, he then recorded shot for shot the video We Don't Talk About Bruno, using his camera and his iPad to edit. Just a remarkable thing that really shows you how when you give powerful tools to young people, they will find very creative ways to use them. Just a little note on Brazil. 3/4 of Brazil's 6 to 15-year-olds, per our current statistics, own a smartphone of their own. Probably an Android, less frequently an iPhone. But you can see how that's jumped from 2019, when we last surveyed Brazil, to fall of 2021, when we surveyed it more recently. That it has jumped by 5 percentage points. The chart that you're seeing here is not over time, it's over age. And I highlighted the bit that shows that it's those early ages where they're really starting to get a smartphone. That's in green. That's where the ownership of smartphones really jumps. So we're seeing the average now jump up to being around 8 or 9 years old that they get their own smartphone. As I said, you give kids tech, you give kids time, and they're going to come up with really creative ways to do things. They made games in Roblox. They started businesses. They wrote novels. They did all kinds of creative things that they were driven to do. It wasn't someone else saying, you really ought to make a game, you really ought to write a book. It was kids saying, what's in my mind? What's in my creativity? What's in my imagination that I really want to put forward? And that's really important right now, because when it's intrinsic, they will pursue it a lot further than if it's pushed on them. So let's look at gaming a little bit. We were already seeing gaming move toward being more and more social, even before the pandemic. You think of Candy Crush. Candy Crush, you can compete with other people, but you're really playing by yourself, and the goal is leveling up. It's getting to that next layer, or next level of the game. It's not, you might talk with your friends about it, but it's not in the game that you're competing with them. Then you had the big AAA games like Call of Duty, where you could socialize. You could be either competitive or you could play with a team. You could socialize in the game, or you could socialize on a parallel platform while you were playing. Now we've got these really social, engaging, immersive platforms that kids absolutely love. Roblox, Minecraft, Fortnite. Among Us came up during the pandemic as well, where you can play by yourself, but you can also collaborate. You can play one game, or you can play many. So kids found that was their playground. That was where they gathered during the pandemic. You can see just how much this generation rose during the pandemic to play these platforms. You can see that it really peaked in April 2021 with the Delta strain, when they were out of lockdown the first time, but now back in it again with Delta for a lot of them. And then how now that they're more free, it's really dropped off the edge. That with the exception of Roblox, they really are putting down their devices and going back to playing with their friends. But these platforms, Roblox, Minecraft, Fortnite, so much appeal to the things that this ICANN generation, as we refer to them, wants. They want to make their own choices. They want to pursue their own passions. They want to be social and collaborative in their play, often more than they want to be competitive. Sometimes they'll compete, but they really want to play with each other, not necessarily against each other. And they love the brands that are inside this and the content and their favorite characters. They will chase their favorite characters to whatever platform they're on. Let's look at why kids play each of the three big games. Fortnite is exciting to them. It's the Battle Royale especially is tense and exciting. It's competitive, but it's also social. They really do play as teams, or they want to be in the same server so that they're playing together. Minecraft, by contrast, is much more about being creative. It can be exciting, especially if you're playing with the zombies and such, but it's also a very social thing, that they gather on a server and they build together. And then Roblox, which is where we'll spend probably the most time talking today, is social for them. It's also exciting because there are so many games, and they can immerse themselves in something that really gets them, pleases them. But it's also creative. Many kids are making their own games. And that's why we think of Roblox as the proto-metaverse, the closest thing we have right now to a metaverse. It's a platform you download once, and then you can play a game, or you can make a game, you can play one game, or you can play not all the games. There are tens of millions of them on there. You can go to a concert, you can go to a book launch, an awards ceremony. Kids were having birthday parties in Roblox where they'd play for a while and then gather in a particular place to celebrate. You can hang out with your friends, you can buy the things that represent you, the clothes or the weapons or the tools. And there's the in-game currency, and this is now the number one place that kids spend their pocket money, on Robux, so inside the game. And as you see here, over 50% of US kids play at least weekly. These social games, they align so perfectly with this ICANN generation. You can play one-to-one if you're just feeling like hanging out with your best friend. You can play in a small group if all your friends want to gather and play. Or you can get on a global server and play with people you've never met from all over the world. If you don't feel like playing, just hang out. There are waiting rooms where you can just hang out and chat. You can talk. You can chat while you do it, as opposed to if you get together with your friends and you want to watch a movie where you don't really socialize. You can win. A lot of these games offer the opportunity to earn bragging rights. We actually Dubit runs something called the Metaverse Gaming League, where you can win Robux, not just by being the best player, but just for showing up. Or you can play We Win. You can play with your friends and collaborate. As I say, a lot of this generation prefers that over competition. You can try out real-world solutions and things. I mentioned the kid who built Encanto in Minecraft. We are now hiring people who are game builders because they started building games in Roblox when they were young teenagers. And we're hiring them at 17, 18, 19 years old to build the games for big brands. And you can choose escape or reality. If you want to play a game that is very topical, very very serious, you can do that. If you want to just play a game that's a fantasy, a lot of kids needed that escape during COVID. Let's run through a day in the life of a typical teenager. I want to show you how the metaverse, if you think of it broadly enough, really is everywhere. Our teenager that we're thinking about, before school, she fell behind a little bit and she has to finish last night's homework. And her homework involves a chemistry assignment where she's using an augmented reality app to create molecules. And the augmented reality helps her figure out if she's put it together right. At school, she may be going into a virtual reality experience, and there's a wonderful report from the Brookings Institution on how to do that properly, how to keep the teacher at the center, guiding kids in this experience where they might immerse themselves in ancient Greece or a place that they couldn't normally go, but keeping them responsible not just for it being a passive fun experience, but for being one where they're really looking to learn something and then to talk to each other when they come out about what it is that they've learned. After school, they probably put down technology and get out and play sports. So, we're not all going to be hooked into our devices 24/7. But a lot of kids are going to be improving their performance in sports training through virtual reality, where you can practice different things, or through artificial intelligence that will track your movement within a sport and give you suggestions on how to improve your form. So you can see our football player down on the lower right there is learning from AI how to position herself for the best possible kick. And the one in the middle is using virtual reality to rehearse a situation inside a game. After school, also, you might connect up with a friend who lives somewhere completely different and have a jam session. If you're a guitar player and your friend is a singer, well, there's now software that allows you to be sort of connected in an immersive world where the latency is so low that you can actually sing and play together and record together, even if you're halfway around the world from each other. In the evening, fashion is a huge thing in the metaverse right now, and you can go shopping online, you can upload your photo, you can use artificial intelligence to look for outfits that are going to match the look that you're trying to put together, and try them on in this space. You can see how many brands are now coming to the metaverse to present fashion. Nike Land, you can try all the different newest Nike styles. Calvin Klein has had a fashion show inside Roblox. We did a fashion show, or we did an event actually inside for Rebecca Minkoff, a designer who was launching a set of NFTs. And as she launched them, she wanted a game that would draw attention to it. So we created an obstacle course game. It's called an abre in Roblox, where you had to wear high heels while you were doing it, which made it both fun and funny. And if you won in that game, you had a chance to win a real pair of Rebecca Minkoff flame boots that you see there in the image. So it connected the real and the virtual world. So in the evening, our teenager might spend some time looking for her next fashion look. The family gets together in the evening too. Throughout the pandemic, we saw families spending a lot more time together and doing a lot more things together, including a lot of television watching. But imagine if they could be not just watching a competition that took place. We already have a competition where it's avatars that are competing, so that you don't know who the person is behind it. You just know how they're representing themselves. Imagine though if you could virtually be in that audience, if you could put on your VR goggles and be sitting in the audience in the auditorium as that competition went on. Or maybe you could even be in the competition. Maybe you could even be performing on stage inside virtual reality. Late at night, maybe go to a concert. We have figures now that show that more people have attended concerts in metaverse platforms in 2022 than have attended concerts in the real world in 2022. It's not surprising. You can get 90,000 people into Maracana Stadium, or maybe a few more, or you can get 33 million into Roblox to watch Lil Nas X. And on the weekend, let's use augmented reality again. The family gets out. Maybe they're playing Pokemon Go. That's still going strong even after all these years. But maybe they're out looking at plants or looking at the stars and using augmented reality to figure out what it is they're looking at. Again, breaking away from technology, but taking technology, using it when it's a tool. Maybe you go camping and you just use these things as you're out on a hike while you're camping. So the important part for you, really, I imagine, is why brands, why content, why TV content creators really need to be paying attention to the metaverse. There are solutions within the metaverse across the entire life cycle of the content you're creating. When you are creating something new, instead of making a pilot, you could make a game inside a metaverse platform, a very simple game that lets you test your characters, lets you test your concept at a much lower cost of both production and acquisition of fans than you would for an app. We created a very small game for someone launching a brand new brand that had not been seen before, launching a brand new television program that had not been seen before. And we spent a very small amount, 1,000 UK pounds, on advertising within Roblox to bring people to this platform. They came in, they explored, we got tens of thousands of players on the weekend that it launched. But even better, they started making YouTube videos saying, what is this? I've never seen these characters or this story or this world before. Where can I find more of it? Which really built enthusiasm for the TV series when it launched. You can acquire a fan base at launch by building a game that goes along with your television content. And the cost of doing this is roughly 1/100th of what it would cost to build an app to go along with your content and launch it on the App Store. You get low friction sampling. With Roblox, for example, you don't pay anything more to play different games. And that's one of the things parents love about it. Download it once and you don't have the kid coming to you and saying, oh, I need to download another game, another game, another game. You can play all the games on Roblox. So kids can try it out very easily. Retention. You really get to manage the world that you create when you create a world in Roblox or Fortnite Creative or put your brand into Minecraft or one of these other platforms. You create it, you control it, and so many more video platforms now make you do your own marketing. So you really want to be focused on where can I get the audience fastest, least expensive, and get the most people to try out my content. And then you can watch what's going on in the game. You can see how kids play inside the space that you create and make sure they understand it. If you see things where they're getting confused, you can change the game, but you can also think about, well, is this going to be confusing in my video content as well? And then finally, we talk about a concept called fanatomy, which is deepening fandom by creating positive brand association. And with this generation, that really has to do with giving them some control, giving them some ownership, giving them some participation in your brand. So, for example, you can sell merchandise, which is virtual merchandise with your brand on it, and they can take that everywhere within Roblox. They can't yet take it across from Roblox to Fortnite, but maybe that's coming. But really what you want is for them to be wearing your brand when they travel around, when they're with their friends, when they are expressing, what it is that they like. And you can also get sharing from kids. They can tell their friends what it is they're playing. We've created something recently that we call portals, which is where when you're playing a game in Roblox, you come across a portal and it says, would you like to try this other game? And if you say yes, it sucks you into the portal and drops you into the other game. It's a really good way for brands to collaborate and share marketing costs by having kids go back and forth across the games in this world where it's so hard to get discovered. There is room for everyone inside the metaverse, and so don't think that if you're not a big company, don't have huge amounts of money, that there's not a space for you. Yes, you can build an immersive world, a big dedicated world like we did for Nickelodeon with the Nickverse. Even they, however, started off with two of their franchises with SpongeBob and Avatar, and they're going to grow it slowly over time, add two more franchises, so without making a huge investment to get the whole thing in there all at once. And that's the great thing about this, is you can keep updating, keep changing. But we're also discovering you can have an integration within a game. As I said, we started something called the Metaverse Gaming League, where within a game that exists in Roblox, we invite people in. We have a Twitch stream with a host, an influencer, a VJ, whatever you want to call it, who keeps things fun. And just for showing up, you can win Robux, or for playing the game, you can win Robux. It's a social event, and what's fun is it's timely. You have to be there when it happens. It's a throwback to old school TV. And then you can do a campaign or a pop-up. When we did the Grammys, the UEFA Women's Euros, things like that. Those experiences weren't meant to last for forever. They were meant to be there for 2 or 3 weeks just to raise interest leading up to a big event like the Grammys or like the Euros. Advertising, marketing in the metaverse is going to be a completely different thing. Don't think of pop-up ads, don't think of banner ads, don't think of the traditional kinds of advertising that you know inside the internet. Instead, it's really kind of a blend of brand affinity from TV, where you want to show people an image, you want to show people a world that they think, yeah, that speaks to me. That's what I want to affiliate myself. I want to align myself with that brand because it matches my view of myself. But then you also have the immersion of games where you can not only see the brand, but you can play with it, you can explore its world, you can try it out, you can sit in the driver's seat of a car, you can try on clothes, all these things where you really get to participate. And then there's the immediacy of the internet, that if you really want to go and get more information, you're just one click away from either being able to find out more or sometimes even being able to buy right away. We discovered that kids increasingly are finding new brands within games. Around a quarter of kids tell us they find their next brand that they are interested in or their next content that they're interested in inside a game, whether that is by playing the game because it's featured there somehow, or just because as they talk with their friends, they talk about everything, including what brands and such they're having fun with. I mentioned Fanatomy. Fanatomy is just kind of like a tennis game where you go back and forth with your audience, that you put forth what you think your story, your content, your world is, and your audience comes back and said, yeah, but wouldn't it be cool if we could do this? And then you have a choice of saying, yeah, I'll accept that and I'll incorporate it into what I do, or saying, no, that doesn't really match. But you know what? Even just showing that you are listening, even if you don't accept all the suggestions, really builds people's trust in you, fans' trust in you, that you are a brand that is listening to them, that's paying attention, that is there for them. And that can get them to go and tell their friends about it. It can get them to spend more time with it. It can get them to buy the virtual merchandise or the real world merchandise. So Fanatomy is really important in not just discovery, but in growing your brand. But what that means, and this is probably the hardest part for brands and content right now, is letting go, even just a little bit. It's traditional in media that if somebody does art, fiction, something around makes a game around your content, your lawyers would send them a letter telling them to stop it. That's changing really fast right now. And in part it's changing because of young people's expectations. They want to find their favorite brands on every platform. They want to create around them. They don't just want to consume. They want to feel that they're being listened to. What I was just saying with Fanatomy. They want to feel that you are authentic. And so the way that brands are starting to respond now is either by licensing their assets to a place where kids can play with it, or where you can even create games around it. There are over 2,000 Lego games in Roblox, none of them created by Lego. And Lego has chosen to say for now, as long as you don't do something bad with our brand, we're going to let this go because it shows us how young people want to play with the Lego brand. In the month after Squid Games debuted on Netflix, there were over 100,000 Squid Game games on Roblox. And Netflix has said, this is great. This is free publicity for us, and it also shows us how young people want to play with our stories. A good example of that, Warrior Cat, some of you may be familiar with it. It's a set of books that has sold millions and millions of books since 2003. They always had a strong fan fiction and YouTube representation, and they realized at some point in the mid-2010s that they should probably be on Roblox. So they went looking to see if there were already games there, and they found a bunch. They found over a dozen. And what they found was one of those games was exactly what they would have made if they had started from scratch, if they'd made it themselves. It was made by a teenager in Florida. So they went, and instead of telling that teenager, stop because we're going to make our own, they made a partnership with them. And that team is still building the Warrior Cats Roblox game that launched in May 2021 and already has 150 million plays and 2 million unique users. So your IP may be there, and you may find an easier way to get into the metaverse than to start from scratch. Is there going to be TV in the metaverse? That's probably the biggest question we're asking ourselves right now. We know that people like live and scheduled events. I talked about the Metaverse Gaming League, where Roblox plus Twitch, but you have to be there when it happens. We've talked about live concerts and just how many people are attending a concert that happens at a particular time. We don't know whether necessarily it's going to be channels, like a scheduled channel or streamers. We are finding kids, young people, more and more often want a scheduled service because it's too hard to choose a lot of the time. Some of you have probably had this experience of looking at maybe Netflix and finding you've spent the whole evening deciding what to watch instead of actually watching something. We find that one of the reasons TikTok is so big right now is because kids don't want to spend a long time in something unless they're sure they're going to like it. So TikTok is very low risk. It just is a few, 30 seconds per video, and then you're on to the next. So that may speak to having more of a channel presence in the metaverse where you're onto something new quickly and somebody has kind of programmed it for you. We don't know if it's going to be wide or deep. Is it going to be an all Disney space in the metaverse with Marvel and Star Wars and all the other Disney brands? Or are you going to go into separate worlds for separate titles like a Star Wars world or a Marvel world? We can be pretty sure that there will be genre spaces there, where if you are a tennis fanatic, you have a particular place to go to participate in tennis videos, or to watch tennis videos, to participate in tennis games, to really immerse yourself with other fans, because it'll be community based. And then finally, we talk about clubhouses and portals, and you'll have to decide which one you want to be. In a clubhouse, your fans love the kind of overall brand. Nickelodeon was the perfect example of a clubhouse. Kids trusted Nickelodeon to have content that they would love, and so they would keep coming back thinking, there's going to be something there that I'm going to like. A portal is much more like Netflix, where it's just, I'm not a fan of Netflix, I'm a fan of the shows inside Netflix. I'm a fan of Stranger Things or something like that. And so you just use that as your way to get there. I've talked about how we get one shot at this. We are being watched right now by regulators worldwide who are very eager to put the clamps down, put laws, rules on new digital platforms to keep kids safe. And it's a good thing that they are. I think there are three groups that are going to be critical to creating a safe and ethical metaverse. What I call map makers are the people who decide what you see as you travel around these spaces. Think about the program guide on your television. What surfaces to the top is much more likely to get watched than if you have to go 3 layers deep to find it. In the metaverse, it'll be the same thing. How the artificial intelligence tells you what you should be, what might be of interest to you, what it surfaces in the world you're exploring is going to determine whether it gets seen or not. Then there are the gatekeepers. Who's going to figure out identity on these platforms in the metaverse? Are you really 13? Are you really 18? Are you really 21? Are you who you say you are? Are you an adult in a children's space who may be there for bad reasons? And the people who set the algorithms for determining identity are going to have a huge amount of power, and those algorithms have to grow with you, and they have as you get older, they have to keep track of that. As you get more freedom, whether it's from parents or whether it's because you've earned it in some other way, they need to be able to keep track of that. And then finally, the referees. The world has borders, the metaverse doesn't. So how are we going to have global rules, laws, regulations that will keep this a safe and ethical space? A number of governments are looking at it right now, everything from the state of California within the U.S. to the European Union. So, small and large, they're looking at it. There are a lot of non-governmental organizations appearing that are there to maintain safety. There are positive design NGOs. If you haven't discovered yet Design for Children's Rights, it's a wonderful organization that has some really great resources on how to keep children's rights in mind as you design. The metaverse is going to run on data, and we're going to need to gather some data if we're going to keep it, doing all the things that we expect of it to be global, persistent, personalized, participatory. It's going to need to know a lot about you in order to do that. But a distributed metaverse as opposed to a centralized one. So you will own a lot more of your data, and you will decide when and how to share it in a community, much more than when a Facebook or an Instagram or Fortnite says, we need this information about you in order to let you play the game, let you participate in the social network, and we're not going to always tell you how we're going to use it. I wanted to talk just a little bit about identity in the metaverse because it's such an interesting emerging field. Young people today will change identity throughout the day, and they really will bring different elements of themselves to the surface or hide them depending on who they're with. If you live in a small town and you are gay, it may not be possible for you to show that when you are either in the real world or in virtual space with friends from that town. But you may need to explore that side to understand that there are places that will be safe for you and places where you will be accepted. And you can do that through how you present yourself with your avatar. That's the kind of safe expression that is not always possible in real life, but it can also mask risk. If we don't know who someone is, it may not always be safe to reveal yourselves. The metaverse has such great potential for cultural exchange, but as I say, we need to make sure that Brazil, that Latin America has a place in the metaverse, that it's not just all run by the major northern companies and all run in the English language and all run for commercial purposes. The digital divide is real. If we don't figure out ways to get both devices, broadband, and the tools for creation to all the different places in the world, then it will be a very pale and uninteresting metaverse if we don't have that kind of diversity. When you go into a metaverse platform, you create a persona. My persona is there on the left. I am a noob. I am a new user. My avatar is the one that I got when I signed up for Roblox. I haven't changed it at all. I haven't bought anything. But an interesting story about on the right, we created a research space in Roblox where we could meet with kids and talk to them about the things that they like to do in the games. And when our researcher created her first avatar, she used that one that's in the picture frame. It was very businesslike. She was, sitting on a chair. She was dressed in what looked sort of like an adult clothing. And kids didn't respond well to her. They could tell, and they actually said at times, we can tell that you are new to this platform, you're not a native user, you don't really understand it. So she spent a little bit to upgrade her avatar, and she used it to express her own persona, her love of foxes, her love of Japanese culture, and now kids relate to her in a much different way and talk to her at times about some of their favorite role-play games because they see that she's role-playing. What you really use your avatar for is to express your passion, and sometimes that's around brand. So on the right, this is a boy who bought a fan-made Adidas shirt. As I say, not made by Adidas themselves, made by a user on the platform and sold to use other players. But it was allowed him to wear his favorite brand. I talked about the world that we created for for Rebecca Minkoff for her NFT sale, where you could win a pair of actual boots. The fascinating thing to me about this is that people will spend more for goods in a virtual space than they would for the actual goods. So spending $4,000 for this Gucci purse here that you see in Roblox, which is more than the actual cost of buying up the real purse in a shop. There are challenges to representation, too. We haven't figured out all the problems yet. You can see, again, in our research space, our researcher was kind of confused by the avatar in the picture frame there, who was wearing a very short skirt, who was dressed in a very kind of sexy look she felt. And she thought, oh, an adult has come into my kid's space and went to say, I'm sorry, I'm using this space for interviews with young people. And the person said, oh yeah, that's what I'm here for. I'm 8 years old. She was unaware of the impression that her avatar was making, but she was expressing what she thought was her persona, or what the sort of, this is the way I want to present myself to the world. So media literacy becomes really important in worlds like this. And then this question of the evolution of digital blackface. In a world where you can be anything you want, what is it appropriate for you to be? Are there norms about representing a particular race or gender that are different from those in the real world? I would never wear blackface in the real world, but can I portray myself as a black avatar? Okay, just a few takeaways before we finish. I've talked for a long time now. As I say, we've got the opportunity to build what we want, not just take what we get. And you folks at comKids, you are the ones who can build it. You are the ones who can create it. You are the ones who understand kids. But we only get one chance at it. So be really careful about ethical and beneficial building when you go to make something in a metaverse space. Media models are less often top-down than they used to be. It used to be, I mentioned the cease and desist letters. It used to be that IP owners would say, here's what we're offering you, take it or leave it. Now we've got this wonderful cooperative space among content makers, tech companies, fans, and you really need to be responsive to that. You need to be listening to your fans, and you need to be showing them that they do have some say in how you design and think about your content, and that you're looking at how they like to play with it, how they like to learn from it, how they like to tell the stories that you create. A lot of favorites are now born digital. Sometimes that's native, sometimes that's I came up with an idea and it was best as a game, so I made it as a game. Sometimes it's proof of concept. I talked before about this idea that you can create a space very inexpensively where you can test out your characters, test out your stories. And so that's a good way for you to get into a new piece of IP, a new kind of content, without really spreading your resources too thinly, without spending too much all at once, but testing with this audience that expects things to be there in digital. These generations want to be involved with their stories and the characters and the brands they love. So this repeats a little bit what I was saying above, but they want to have their ideas listened to, and they want to be able to play with the brands that they love. That brand affinity, when they love a brand, it's built on immersion and interactivity. It's built on creating spaces where they can not just look at a picture, watch an advertisement, but really go in and explore the world that you envision around your content and characters. And last, none of this that I've talked about is meant to say that TV or video isn't still really, really important in their lives. Kids still love to watch video. YouTube, streaming channels, public broadcasting to some extent, commercial broadcasting. All these things are key parts of kids' lives, and they love well-told stories. But don't get complacent, because we're already seeing that on native interactive devices, tablets, smartphones, PCs, games are beating video in terms of time consumed. So make sure that you are where your audience is, that you are responsive to them, and giving them the stories they love, but also giving them the chance to play. I've talked a couple times about how we can build the world that we want. We can build the world that young people want, and they're going to keep building it for us. And I hope, as one of the founders of the internet says, that there will be a cohort that realizes they want something more from their media, and they set out to create it in partnership with all of you. That's it for me. Here's my contact information. I'm very happy to answer your questions or tell you a little more about our research or see if we can be of help to you directly. Thank you so much for your time. I hope to be back in Sao Paulo next year for comKids, but for now, it's been wonderful spending some time with you. Thank you much.
Muito obrigada, David Kleeman. Thank you very much for wonderful presentation. Realmente, I will speak a little bit in Portuguese and English just to maintain everybody on the loop. Eu queria dizer para vocês que eu estou, enfim, inundada de informação, é uma quantidade de informação enorme. Espero que vocês tenham aproveitado, o pessoal também em Spanish. Creo que de alguna forma un vídeo en inglés con subtítulos en portugués, de alguna forma ustedes alcanzaran un poco lo que queríamos traer, porque en tiempos de tanto, we are in a very confused and complex world at this moment. So we just came from the COVID. We are not sure that the pandemic is completely finished or if it is gonna give us another surprise. Children are not the same, probably the ones that came from the COVID, that will start this new reality where we don't know exactly who are those children. So I think the presentation was fantastic to give us like a lot of questions on the mind and ideas also to what to do. So let's see if we already have some questions. Thaisa, Daniel.
While you check for that, I'll just say that kids created the world, as I talked about a little in the presentation. Kids created the world they needed and wanted during COVID. And it's going to be very interesting to see when they go back, as they go back to schools now, with a new school year, at least up here in the US and Northern Hemisphere starting soon, as they go back to school, will they be content to go back to the same schools that they went to, or will they want to control much more of their own learning? Will they want to do project-based learning? Will they want to explore on their own? How will schools respond to that? It's a really interesting question. And obviously the social side of it, kids having been without being with their friends for such a long time during the pandemic, how will they respond? What can we do to support them socially, emotionally as they come back together?
Yeah, for sure. My impression and one thing that came to me during the presentation before I went to the first question is about the testing. So as a creative producer, I was very interested, and I'm still in, let's see how can we test our new characters, our new stories inside the Roblox or one of the spaces that are available for us to, just test new ideas, new characters. This is really an opportunity, and it seems to me that it's not so expensive, as you said.
You're right. It's not as expensive, and when you commit something to videotape, when you put record a video, that's what it's going to be. Once you finish editing it, it's fixed. When you create a game or even just a small experience, you always have the opportunity to go back and update it, expand it, edit it. You can find out by watching kids play in it where they struggle, where they have trouble. You can find out who their favorite characters are by sort of how they relate to the game, who they want to play with, play as. So you can find out a lot about your content.
So here is the question of Philip. I think you are reading now, David. Yes, so you can answer. Go ahead.
Well, I had seen that before this question that just came up asking about good platforms, he'd also mentioned some of the immersion in Fortnite and their expansion into content. I think that's a platform that we are keeping the most eye on right now, because you have Lego investing in Epic Games, the creators of Fortnite. You have Epic working on a new version of their engine, their Unreal Engine, that's really going to allow a lot more participation by the audiences, by companies like Dubit, by big and small companies. It's interesting that it feels a little bit like Fortnite wants to be Roblox and Roblox wants to be Fortnite. That Roblox is trying to age up. They really are very interested in the 14 to 25, the teen and young adult audience, creating for them. They're creating more complex tools so that you can make more interesting, complex, deep games. So they are leaving behind kids a little bit, who were always kind of at the center, knowing that kids will be there and aiming older. Meanwhile, Roblox is introducing new tools in some ways to open up to more audience participation. So I think those are the ones that we are looking most closely at. We're exploring some of the Web3, as it's called, platforms, Decentraland and Sandbox and places like that. I think for kids, they're not really the right place right now. This idea of decentralized control and probably doesn't have enough safeguards in place right now for it to be a really good place for kids to play and such. There are some interesting things going on with kids and NFTs, the non-fungible tokens. And you've probably read about NFTs as being these things that people are trading at just ridiculous prices, that people are buying, what was it, $60 million for a piece of NFT digital art. When we look at kids and NFTs, that's not what we are looking at. We're looking at Encanto, a bilingual company here in the US, is offering NFTs that's primarily preschool content, offering NFTs to parents as a way of, it's almost like a crowdfunding of their content. So by selling them to parents, they're saying, if you love our content for your kids, buy this. And it's not meant to trade. It's not meant to go, have extraordinary value, but you're buying it to say, I want to be part of this growing platform. So I still think NFTs as a trading thing are just not appropriate for children, but as a means of expressing passion, as a collectible, in the same way that kids used to collect sports, football cards or superhero trading cards or something. That's one area that we're keeping an eye on.
Okay, so let's go to the next.
I think one of the things that was very interesting to us during the pandemic in response to this question is that families when parents were able to be home more with their kids, they were paying much more attention to what their kids were doing with media. And we found in a lot of cases that it changed their perspective on what their children were doing in immersive platforms like Minecraft, like Roblox, but also what they were doing in Google and what they were doing in YouTube, that they started to see that it was about the content and the context and what their kids were passionate about, interested in, what their kids needed, much more than it was just about filling time. So the parent who at first might have said, oh, he's been in Minecraft for 3 hours today, how do I get him to stop? Suddenly would have the time to look at what their child was creating in Minecraft and say, wait a minute, you figured out how to build that? You figured out all the steps you needed to envision something and then make it happen in the game, and start to be more impressed with their ability for critical thinking, for iterative thinking, for coding, than they necessarily were before. I think one of the reasons I think that some of these platforms are aging up is trying to age up is because they want parents to engage with it. They want co-play in the way that Pokemon Go was something that families all did together. They want parents to take a new look at the way that everybody, not just young people, but everybody engages with the metaverse and find their own space in it. If parents have something that they are passionate about, they should learn that this is going to be a place for them to find their community, to immerse themselves, to create, and that will enhance the connection between the generations.
Okay, thank you. Next, please.
Aldana, hello. Free press, fake news. What an excellent question. I think this is why I tried to talk in the presentation about identity in the metaverse and about who will verify different platforms, different content, different people. There is so much potential for cross-cultural exchange, for us to really come to understand each other across borders, across continents. But there's so much potential for us to really explore what's going on in the world and to get an inside perspective from people who are in the middle of a situation. But at the same time, there is so much potential for misinformation, for disinformation, for, as Aldana says, fake news, that we really need to find a way around. I'm especially intrigued, when we talk about metaverse, often we think about it as either virtual reality or games. And the platform that people don't talk about as much, I mentioned it a little bit in the day in the life, is augmented reality. And I would love to see journalists like Aldana, like Jan Willem, like the people who have been coming to comKids for so long and are so dedicated to engaging young people in the world around them and in the news that happens around them and the news that's relevant to them. I would love to see a use of augmented reality where we tag the world with things that happen there. So as a young person is walking down the street and passes in front of a building, they might get an alert on their phone that says news happened here. And they would be able to look and see, this is the place where this event from history, from recent history, from yesterday took place, and start to see that news is not something that happens to other people. It's not something that happens far away. It is something that is around us every day and that we need to engage with, that we can't just think of as, oh, that doesn't concern me, but think of it as I'm in the middle of this and I have a role to play.
Thank you.
And Aldana is followed by Jan Willem. People are hitting on exactly the points that are critical. That if the digital divide is real, that access to these platforms at a good speed is going to be one of the defining points of whether it succeeds as a global phenomenon, as a global connector, or whether it becomes just something for the North. I remember very clearly the first World Summit on Media for Children. No, I take it back. It was the second World Summit on Media for Children, or the third, actually, in South Africa. I lost track of them. In South Africa, one of the speakers got up and said, the information superhighway, at the time that's the term that we were using, will come to South Africa, but will South Africans be driving any of the cars? And I think that's still absolutely the question is, yes, the metaverse will be everywhere, but will there be content from all countries, from all regions, from all parts of the world, from all cultures, or will it only be my country, the US, and a couple others sort of beaming content to others? I think the thing that encourages me most is looking at the countries substantially on the African continent and Southeast Asia, where they skip a generation of technology. The laptops and such are not that critical. It's mobile technology. It's the smartphone. And they are finding ways to use smartphones to connect with each other in ways that the global North never thought about, and that are really relevant to the cultures there and to doing business and to sharing information and to getting past blockages of information when people try to control what you can have access to. So I think that, yes, the 5-bit and 5 megabit and 500 megabit is a concern, but I think at the same time, if we wisely use the 5G and the mobile signals, then there's a lot of potential there.
Yes, the 5G is just starting in Brazil right now, and as the data sets, the smartphones are reality here everywhere, and even, of course, it's a matter of how much internet or you can have in your phone, but it's coming, and we hope in certain way we could have our culture, our places, our our ideas represented or in some way taking part of this metaverse world.
This is a generation that more than any other has been globally connected from the time it was, it first got on machines. That kids have been playing games with young people in far-flung places of the world. They've been, we have the technology now that musicians are playing duets or playing music together with people who are in a completely different part of the world. Now we have to turn attention from playing games together to planning the change we want to be in the world together. The environmental movement driven by 15, 16-year-olds is a great example of how they've found ways to connect and share information and drive forward the global change in ways that adults haven't done. Yeah,
actually in our festival right now, we receive a lot of content, games, and from different parts of Latin America. And it's amazing how much of our culture, of our story, the indigenous or some of the roots of Brazil or Colombia, they are already in the games, they are already in some of the platforms.
And if you're not familiar, if for anyone who's watching who's not familiar already with the Games for Change organization, they're based in New York, but they are a global organization that looks at a conference every year, but all the time, not just at its conference, at how gaming can be used to make change in the world, to pass along information, to engage people in issues, to explore new ways of collaboration. Very important.
Yeah, actually, we had a representative guy from Game for Change at comKids in one of the roundtables, talking about the social impact of the games. It's really something which is happening. And we have another roundtable on education, which is how some of the games like Minecraft and other games are being used inside schools. So
one of my favorite non-technology examples is there's a fourth grade teacher, so around 10 or 11 years old, in Philadelphia, who several years ago created a game, a world peace game, that was essentially children played different countries throughout a several month period. And they had to use the information about their country and the other countries. They had to make it so that at the end of the game, every country had a positive GNP, gross national product, and they had challenges along the way. So there might be a weather disaster or something like that. And because it was posed as a game, the kids really thought about it in a different way from just a writing assignment or that. And because it took place over a long time, they have never lost. No class of his kids has ever lost. One year they were very close to losing, and one of the young girls in the class invented global aid. She thought, well, wait a minute, there was one country that was still negative in its GNP. That she thought, well, wait a minute, my country has some extra money, and your country has some extra money. Let's give it to them, and then we all win. Kids came up with this themselves.
Okay, so it seems that we already have more questions.
Good.
Monica.
I can't say it often enough. There are digital gaps that need to be solved if this is ever going to reach its potential. I will say that augmented reality is probably the most in reach for any country, any region, only because it's built into all of our smartphones now. The ability to place something, the ability to view something is built into virtually every smartphone now. And so the opportunity to put information into space, but also to harvest information from space, to have it tag you as you go, as you have it notify you that there's information there as you go along, is more democratic than many of the other, still not saying it's perfect, but more democratic than many of the other platforms for it. Yeah, but the question is absolutely the case that without improving the distribution of broadband, we can't make this work for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an excellent question, Daniel, about creating a metaverse, what it takes to create a metaverse platform, and if a public TV channel could do it. At the Kids Screen conference just a few weeks ago, my colleague from our Dubit's research department and I sat down with some of the public broadcasters to talk about what the future holds for public service media. I think instead of public TV channels going forward, we are much more likely to be looking at public service content and public service platforms. And something like, Wadada, what Jan Willem and Free Press International created, has a real potential to become a public service platform that is not a public broadcaster. It's not state sponsored. It's not public, necessarily funded in the same way, or doesn't need the licenses that a BBC, a PBS, would need, but is absolutely public service media. At the Children's Media Conference in the UK just a couple weeks ago, the head of YouTube for Europe and UK and Ireland actually put forth the idea that YouTube is kind of the public service broadcaster of today, that because anyone can contribute to it, because they can put public interest content up there, because they are a equitable platform and a democratic platform in many ways, that they could be seen as public service content. And it's a hard argument to fight against. There is a lot that is not public service there. But if we can help kids find that which is critical to their lives, that which is meaningful to their lives, then these are some of the platforms that will become public channels, public platforms in the future. A more democratic approach to it than one public broadcaster, or a state, even more so a state broadcaster, that puts forth a particular view. In terms of entering the metaverse, I think I talked about it a little in the presentation, that you don't have to create a huge world to be there, that you can create something that's very short term. If there is a news event coming up that is meaningful to young people, think about COP26, for example. If there's something big happening, you can create a very temporary space in a platform like Roblox, like Minecraft even. You will be able to do it in these Web3 platforms, probably even more easily, inexpensively, and democratically than you can on a platform like Roblox. But you'll be able to create a space that only lasts for a particular amount of time, but is intended to create a community around that event and let anyone anywhere feel that they're a part of that event and have a voice in it.
Okay, thank you. And say that before we finish, I just would like to remark two things. One is that comKids understand that YouTube is really a great space, and YouTube Kids now has a kind of a space for comKids, and we are showing like 5 or 6 pieces of quality TV made in Latin America in the comKids space at the YouTube Kids, which is a kind of way to do things, get more democratic and more open to everybody.
Every small development helps. Every
yeah. And in the other hand, I would like to provoke Jan Willem, which is here, just to say that it's time for us to rebuild Allah. I think we have a perfect moment to put the whole Latin America together again, starting to realize, I would say, Allah, which never died. Yes. So thank you very much, David, for your time, for your knowledge, for all information you bring to us. This information, this piece will be here at the comKids YouTube channel, which means that more people will have access to your presentation and then people can send messages to you with the questions. Thank you very much, and comKids will continue. We still have some activities and also the award ceremony of the winners of the festival, but we still have a lot to go. So thank you so much for your time, and for Dubit for bringing you to us, and let's be in touch. And thank you everybody to be here with us. Everybody in Latin America and Brazil, thank you.
Yep.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.